Bitcoin is down over $6,000 from yesterday's all-time high. We are now at prices that have not been seen since 2 days ago, and it's time to finally admit it, guys. It's over. It's absolutely over. This is disgusting. This is terrible. I will never financially recover from this massive red dildo that is now in my angus, out my mouth hole. I am now a bear shish kebab. Terrible, terrible, terrible. But we should now go over what this move essentially represents, and is this anything out of the ordinary, at least for right now. So for that, I would like to reference the historical price action statistics indicator. Difficult to say that right now. It feels like my mouth is full. But we can see that actually on yesterday's massive girthy green dildo, Bitcoin just trading a little bit above the average range that we typically witness for Mondays, especially since this bull market began in 2023. And to the downside today, Bitcoin, yes, overshooting the downside metric a little bit, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see where things actually do end up by the end of the day, because on average for Tuesdays that are red, that are negative closing days from open to close, we do witness, again, since this bull market began, about a 1.8% move to the downside from open to close. So as of right now, Bitcoin's actually overshooting that by a little bit. If we were to go exactly towards that average, it would be about 117,700. But I do want to show you something very briefly here because, well, I just think it's rather interesting. And if we go into the HPAS and we actually don't start this data from the beginning of this bull market and we look at the whole history of Bitcoin, we can actually see something super interesting here, or at least, I mean, as a nerd, I think it's quite interesting. But you know, we can see that if we do incorporate all of the data for Bitcoin's history, we can see not only was yesterday's massive girthy green dildo, in fact, pretty much right at the top end of what you expect for the average returns for a Monday, but today, Tuesday, the red dildo is now effectively at the lower end of the average loss that you have expected throughout the whole entirety of Bitcoin's history. So, you know, how do you interpret this, or how do I interpret this? Well, the way that I interpret this is that Bitcoin is still within this overall data. So as long as Bitcoin's, you know, playing within these ranges, I look at this as just a consolidation. And realistically, and in a more serious tone, I put a tweet about this yesterday, but because Bitcoin's at such massive numbers, you know, we have to remember that there's going to be a big shock value just in terms of the absolute price value. And you know, a $6,000 move is a $6,000 move, obviously. But in terms of percentages, you know, it's well within the data, at least for right now. Now, I'm not saying that that can't change, but now we actually have, you know, we have standardized areas to be looking at that would effectively tell us when something out of the ordinary is happening. Now, if Bitcoin really does close below, especially this lower end boundary, which would be at 116,400 by the end of Tuesday, then yeah, okay. If you are overshooting something like that, then it does call into question the current rally, absolutely. But as long as Bitcoin's above, again, on a closing basis, you know, am I that worried about this? Well, not necessarily. Again, for Bitcoin, just to put things into perspective, at about $120,000, which is where I'm kind of bookmarking Bitcoin in my mind, a 1% move is $1,200. And if you look at the data here, on average, Bitcoin has greater than, I mean, it's closer to like a 3% move, whether it be a green day or a red day, you know, as almost a minimum. Yeah, you do see some days a little bit under that for sure. But, you know, that means that you can expect ranges on a day of, you know, $3,000, $4,000. And it doesn't make that much of a difference. Again, when you see price hanging out within these ranges, well, it's really not indicative of anything like super serious going on. Now, of course, when we did see Bitcoin close above the upper band of this on the breakout, well, that was indicative of the legitimacy of this breakout. So I'd be looking at the same thing right here. Again, as long as Bitcoin's above 116,400 on today's closure, I would still be looking at this as, well, a very nasty, a very volatile, a very significant consolidation, but, you know, still a consolidation nonetheless after a pretty massive move to the upside. Anyways, so now that we've gone over that, let's go over the line in the sand for the current rally. I mean, I just kind of gave it away right there, 116,400. We could come at this from one other angle as well. If we look at the price action pivots indicator on the daily time frame for CME, let me bring it up over here, and we can see that the daily price action pivots indicator is showing the upper boundary of the most recent breakout, kind of coming in around about 116 or so, very much in alignment with that red 5 EMA at about 116,300, which is effectively the same number as what we saw right here. So these things coming in around the same region, I would say, hey, if you see Bitcoin start to close below there, okay, yes, then definitely there is something concerning going on for the actual trend, and perhaps we do get a nice little washout move to the downside, perhaps undoing a lot of this rally that began about a week ago now. But until that happens, I'd still be interpreting this as just a consolidation, bro, just a pullback, bro. Although it is, again, a very big nominal move. Of course, I'm not discounting that at all. Just putting things in perspective here. And again, I'm not saying that it can't change, just these numbers for where it actually does change are very, 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 very well defined. So I wouldn't be front running these until proven otherwise. Anyways, let's now go over how would you on the other side confirm, or how would I confirm that Bitcoin is in the process of putting in the next higher low and it is setting up for another opportunity to the upside. Well, for that, I'll bring you over to this chart. And I do want to acknowledge that on the lower term timeframes, we can see that the RSI is already getting to lows that we haven't seen since, well, last week when Bitcoin was, trading about almost $10,000 lower at 108. So, again, this does provide a very big buffer region for Bitcoin here. This is just a 6-hour time frame, by the way. The 4-hour time frame is already below those lows. So again, to put this into perspective, the 4-hour RSI is where the low was on Tuesday the 8th when Bitcoin was trading at 108,000 US dollars. So there is going to be potential for hidden bullish divergence. Again, it is nowhere near being confirmed as of right now. I want to be very, very clear with that, obviously. But, if you look at Bitcoin here and you see it, perhaps, again, maybe have a slight further washout on this move. Again, I mean, it's a big number again, but in terms of actual areas of interest, it's not really violating much right here. And you start to see it turn back around, let's say back above about 118. That actually starts to look quite good for Bitcoin and would start to turn this into a potential for hidden bullish divergence all the way up to not just a 4-hour time frame, but a 6-hour time frame, maybe even a 12-hour time frame. Let's check this one out right here. No, it would not work on a 12-hour time frame just yet. But again, 4 and 6-hour time frame, probably good enough for a move like this. Again, that's only if you see it start to turn around. It is not confirmed this in any way, shape, or form at all whatsoever. Similar to the 5-day volatility versus stochastic momentum chart that we looked at on yesterday's video. That one has also not confirmed because Bitcoin did not finish the day in a volatility expansive format. And we'll actually go over that in just a moment. Let me actually get my notes back on over here because I lost where I was at. But yeah, at least I'd want to see 4-hour hidden bullish evidence. I imagine that would quickly bleed on into the 6-hour time frame. So that would imply that Bitcoin would have to turn around kind of from where it's at right now. Maybe it has a slight extension on the downside to about 115,500 first, but after that, we'd really expect Bitcoin to pop back above about 118,000 bucks. I would imagine this move would have to almost certainly happen before the end of this week is over, in order for the Bullish to remain in charge here. But going on from there, I do want to show that the lower term time frame price action pivot, which I can put on no, it's actually a bearish pivot right now because obviously Bitcoin is putting a high there. Let's see, where's the most recent Bullish? Yeah, 12-hour time frame still at about 107,500 to 108. And I just want to reference yesterday's video again that the price action pivots were significantly lower than where price action is right now. So these ranges are naturally going to be extremely wide. So if you are using leverage, it's going to be fucking hard. I'm not going to lie, it's going to be very, very hard because you might be right on direction overall, but can you survive the waves in between? Well, I think many people have that answer right now, and it's probably no. Anyways, if we do go down to the 4-hour time frame, the most recent price action pivot is about where price action is right now, about 116,500. So again, a lot of things coming in around that region. Let's just say 116.5 or so. If the 4-hour time frame does start to close below there, then yeah, I do think you get at least another slight move to the downside. Let's say about 115 or so. There should be a bounce around there. I'd want to come back to things after that. I wouldn't really make any further analysis on that. But for right now, Bitcoin does seem to be playing a little bit off this one. This is just a 4-hour time frame after all. But if you do see Bitcoin start to turn around here and very specifically pop back up above about 118, let's say 118 and change, about 118,250, and start to close above there, then yeah, you will have the potential, you will have confirmed hidden bullish divergence, and very likely Bitcoin does get another shot back above 120, and we can reconvene after that. Anyways, like I alluded to earlier, the 5-day stochastic Oh, damn it. I didn't bring it up here. Hold on one moment. I will bring it up. Actually, we can just go over this chart right here. Yeah, so the 5-day stochastic momentum versus volatility chart did not finish the day above 15 percentile. It finished the day at about 13 percentile. So it's still possible that it might confirm on this next period, but of course we'll have to wait another, well, 4.5 days now. So it's going to take some time naturally, but yeah, if you were waiting on that setup, or if you're like me watching that setup and waiting for it as well, then no, it is not viable in its current format. It is not viable. I repeat, it is not viable as of right now. It is not fired off. There is no setup until it actually officially fires off, confirmed by the BBWP indicator. But I do want to acknowledge something on the other side here, because there is a real potential that this rally actually could fail here. And when I look at the 5-day stochastic oscillator, we can see upon the new open, which we got last night, we can see that this one is actually pointed down as of right now, and the new pivot is $118,000. So I would go as far to say that on this new period, if Bitcoin is not above 118,000 US dollars in about 4.5 days, like I said, this model is not going to point to an upside move. It's going to favor a downside move. And we can apply a lot of those statistics, although they are slightly different to the downside, but we could apply them to the downside nonetheless. You know, on the lower end, we perhaps are looking at about a 20% move to the downside. On the upper end, we could be looking at like a 40% move to the downside. But again, it's well and far away. I don't want to get ahead of myself right here, just because, you know, these setups do take time to formulate. And I really don't think that there's any like major advantage in front running these, because the returns are so big off of them that, you know, there's no sense in being ultra aggressive if it can lead to, you know, a major counter move in the other direction. And of course, because the 5-day stochastic oscillator has been in the critical zone here for so long, you know, that does bring up some concerns for sure. I do want to represent the downside possibility accurately, because if this one does close to the downside on the next period, and we do see volatility expansion, I mean, that's going to be good enough for me to be at least looking for a very sizable downside move. And, you know, think about like right now when price action is at around 120 and a 1% move is 1,200. I mean, think about what a 20% move is going to look like, which would be, again, on the lower end for a setup like this. Anyways, my point is, if you're looking at these, if you're referencing these videos, look, I'm not your dad. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not a financial advisor. But if I'm relating to what I would be doing, I would not be getting fucking aggressive with these things. Certainly not with leverage right now. Holy shit. Anyways, yes. All right. So no setup there, but there is still the 3-week HPDR setup that we spoke about right here. I think that this one is probably going to be good enough on its own, to be honest, just because of the historical relevancy of it. But if I could, you know, speak to the more long-term here, because in today's video, we've been speaking primarily about the very short term up until now, but the more long-term here, looking at this 3-week time frame, again, Bitcoin on the last 3-week close, which happened just this past Sunday, did reclaim the median on the HPDR, which is what my cursor is currently hovering right here. All of these green vertical bars in Bitcoin's history represent that same signature where Bitcoin reclaims the median. And you can see that typically not typically, but every time Bitcoin has done this on the 3-week time frame, it has gotten a very sizable move to the upside after that. In fact, every time getting at least up to the 61.8 level, which would be, as of right now, about $150,000. Again, it might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less, but it very well could move around, you know, when we get the new open. But at least for now, you know, I still would be biased towards upside. You know, still trend, still a lot of these setups. A lot of these things, you know, I do think, matter. I'll put it that way. Anyways, yeah, you know, just going through some of these past setups, you can see that has been very, 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 very consistent. Now, to be fair, CME has a massive lack of history here, but at least for the history that we do have, every time that has happened, we have seen that result, and that has happened 5 times in Bitcoin's prior history. So, you know, that would even be on kind of the lower end, to be honest. On the upper end, as we went over in yesterday's video, you know, maybe closer to like 170 or so. So, like I said, I personally would be looking for this, or at least I'd be biased towards this one, trying for a higher low first, especially as long as Bitcoin's above that most recent price action pivot here, again, at about $116,500. If Bitcoin starts to close 4-hour dildos below there, okay, you know, another washout, you know, another $1,500 lower to somewhere around 115, I would imagine. should be another bounce attempt there. But assuming that Bitcoin does hold, and if Bitcoin can get back above especially 118, not only will it start to confirm hidden bullish divergence on the 4-hour time frame and 6-hour time frame for that period, but also we're going to see the, of course, 5-day stochastic oscillator once again flip back up to the upright position. Sounds like I'm a fucking air stewardess or some shit. But yeah, that one again is pivoted at 118. So we do see multiple things coming in within that region, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time here. Bitcoin has been more or less vertical for how long? I mean, it's been straight up since 8th of July. So what is that? 7 days pretty much, without any real pullback. This is the first. This is the first like actual pullback, I would say. So bit of patience here. Again, still think that this market, has at least another month to 2 months, and then we'll see. Is it going to be a major high? Is it going to be a macro high? I don't fucking know, but we shall monitor the situation, and I appreciate your attention to this matter. And with that said, I'd like to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.